Well, hello, my friends, and it's good to have you here and have you yet for another great topic, some good information, some nice resources, things that you can take with you to start incorporating into your life and create more awareness in your relationships and your connections to yourself and to others. That's the goal. That's the whole goal of these videos that I do weekly, to help give you some information that you can find useful, that might help you even just ponder and think about things and just, again, create that awareness through that stillness. Or maybe I might give you some tips and stuff that could help you to incorporate into your daily life. Just like anything else, when I do these videos, what I would love to have you take away is that to apply something, maybe one thing of the things that I share that might resonate with you. Because I might share a lot of information, and some might resonate and some might not, and that's completely normal. That's a good thing. That means that you don't agree with me 100%, and I love that, because we shouldn't be agreeing with somebody 100% because they're not us. We're individuals. So we should take away things that resonate with us and incorporate them into our lives to help us create awareness around our world and how we want to perceive it, how we want to show up in the world, how we want to form our relationships. All those good things is really what this is about in creating awareness. Obviously, my action to awareness, that's what it's all about. All right, my friends, so today I want to share with you about the nervous system when it comes to the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. You might have heard of them before. So we have the parasympathetic, which is that rest and digest type of nervous system. And then we have that sympathetic, which is fight or flight. And we have these as it runs through our body. And one of the things that we also have, actually a nerve that I learned about when I was in massage school about 19 years ago, was the vagus nerve. They called it the vagabond nerve because it was the longest nerve and it ran throughout our body. And it kind of ran to random things. It wasn't necessarily something that was computed, or, you could like go, oh, that makes sense why it goes there and there. It just kind of goes to different parts in our body. And it is the longest nerve. And so when it comes to the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, I think that vagus nerve is a really key part in those. So if you've never heard of the vagus nerve, make sure to Google that and search that if you would like, about the vagus nerve and just how it maybe correlates and is part of that parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. One of the things when it comes to our nervous system that they have really done a lot of study on is our correlation between our emotional responses that we're having and our breath, and how our breath can be that it's either, fast, like taking in that sigh breath, like, you've probably done that before when you're talking to somebody and it's kind of maybe a little overwhelming, or you're a little exhausted, you kind of brought in the groceries and you're just like taking the sigh. And when we do that, when we're kind of breathing out of our mouth that way and like that sigh, that's actually engaging in that fight or flight response. So that sympathetic nervous system. And when we're doing that, it kind of can maybe, make us feel a little more anxious, a little more like, rushed in things, a little more hectic about stuff in our lives, a little more anxious. I think I said that, but a little more overwhelmed, maybe even a little more stressed is what we might use. And that's that sigh. So if you hear yourself doing that sigh, think about it, that when we do that, kind of make that noise, that it is part of that fight or flight. So we either want to fight or we're going to flight, right? And then that kind of scenarios in our life. If you think about like a teenager, when they do the sigh and they roll their eyes, right? Kind of thing. When they do that, we think, oh, we're in for something now. They've got, they're either going to fight us or they're just going to walk in the room and shut the door. So again, it's like that engaging part of that fight or flight when we do that, and it can kind of stem from our breath, from that breathing up here, right? That top, that it's kind of interesting. When we think about taking a deep breath, we think like expanding our lungs and doing all this up here in our chest. And the truth is, we want to be using that diaphragm. We want to be breathing in. We want to be like sticking our belly out. So much of our society, we're thought about to stick it in, like we got to suck it in, we got to suck it in. And sucking it in can cause a constriction of that relaxation and actually create more tension, more just like, oh my gosh, I got to do this and do that. So really that sucking in is not the best for our nervous system. It kind of can put us at not at ease and put us into a stressing mode. So a lot of like those girls and Spanx and all those things that we wear that suck it in, believe me, I have occasions that I wear those little things and suck it in. So there's that. But on the regular, it's something that I don't wear. Like if I'm going out to a nice place, things like that, and I want to look a little more sleek, those are beautiful things to have. But if it's on a daily occasion, then we're not getting that breath, that full breath that we would want to get. We're not kind of engaging in that rest and digest. Instead, we are taking response in that fight or flight, and we might feel more anxious throughout our day, feel a little more stressed out, a little more overwhelmed. And when we get into that rest and digest, we can start to feel more of an ease, a calm, maybe even curious about things in our lives. We can take that pause. So it's a very different feeling when it comes to the nervous system and engaging those different parts of the nervous system. So one of the things I wanted to introduce to you, if you haven't heard, is that when it comes to the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, there's actually been some study on the polynervous system, it's been kind of introduced to it. It's called polyventral. I want to say it's called polyvagal theory. And what that is it's talking about the parasympathetic, that there is that rest and digest, and they call it the ventral part, so your front part, which again is that. But then there's a dorsal part, which is more of that animal instinct, which they have associated it with, again, obviously, like we have fight or flight, but then in parasympathetic, we have that rest and digest, and there's also that disassociation, like that escaping feeling, which is part of the dorsal vagal. So we have the ventral vagal and we have a dorsal vagal, which is again another attachment to our parasympathetic. So that rest and digest, there's that, right? So we feel like we can communicate with people, we feel open to people, we feel like we can embrace. And then there's that dorsal part, which makes us feel like, we might want to sit on the couch and watch Netflix and chill all day and just numb ourselves, or eat to numb ourselves, or do something like scroll through social media trying to numb ourselves. And that is part of that dorsal part. Sometimes when we get into that, we can start to feel hopeless. We can start to feel as though we just want to disassociate with everybody. We don't want to engage in anything. And it kind of can curl us into that, put us down that hole of just that isolation that we might be experiencing. And that can be a response because instead of fight or flight, like instead of flight and fight, we just want to kind of curl up in a ball and just not do anything. And that is part of that that parasympathetic, that dorsal part that is kind of being explored and discovered. I think it was like in 1990 something, a doctor had kind of made the association of those things, and how that was part of that response that we don't really talk about, because we talk more about that flight where we just kind of avoid and ignore, but we don't like go into that gloom. We don't go into that where we don't want to associate. We feel like we're depressed. So it's a very different kind of feeling that we might be experiencing. And that can be part of that parasympathetic. And I guess you could say the other side of it, right? Because we got the ventral, the front part, and we got the dorsal. The dorsal is, again, that more of that depression part that can start to be happening. More of those types of things. So I want to talk about, when it comes to that, I kind of talked a little bit about like the sigh that our teenager would have about breathing. And that really is, that stop and take a breath really does matter. I know it's the craziest thing, right? It's always the most simple and easiest things that we don't do that can make the biggest impact in our life, I think. And I just find it so interesting because there's so many things in my life that I could have done that just like this simple little tweak. And it's like I just drug my heels into it and I didn't do it. And as soon as I did, I was like, why did I wait so long to do that? Like, what was I thinking? And it's just very interesting, like within our human nature in itself, how we kind of show up that way when it comes to certain things in our lives. And so when it comes to taking a breath, and engaging into that diaphragm and into that, really getting that deeper breath and the deeper holds on breath, where it's like that anywhere between 5 to 7 seconds of a deeper breath, and not that shallow breathing where we're having that up here, which I think can contribute to, like, anytime we have anything like within that jaw and we feel that tension, that stress in there, we might not be letting go of this stuff up here, and engaging into this gut belly breathing, right? This diaphragm breathing could be really key into helping you kind of come into yourself and be like, oh yeah, I need to take a breath. And when you take deep breaths, it's just these bigger breaths that you start to take. And at the beginning, it can feel like it's awkward, like you're not quite sure if you're doing right, if you're doing it wrong. What I tell people is just put your hand on your tummy and just breathe in and out and try to make your hand move, right? You're trying to make that move up and not make this chest rise and fall all this time, right? Because it's within here that we want to get that breath going. And so as we kind of want to engage in that, some of the things that we can do is, taking in that deeper breath. But also some things I found is that from humming, maybe even singing, like a slower singing, so we're gauging into that diaphragm, that could help too. So we think about it when we start singing a song that reminds us of something wonderful. We're engaging that diaphragm. We're humming something that sounds that we're just remember hearing, and it's enlightening us and making us feel better. We're smiling. When we start to smile, we start to slow it down and engage again into that big belly breath. So breathing doesn't have to be just that we're stopping and taking that pause, but that smiling, that humming, that singing a song, that looking at somebody with your eyes and kind of being present with them as you're listening to them. Listening to people helps us slow down our breath too. We find that as we listen to others around us, that we just start to slow it down. And we don't think that when we're listening, we're really hearing what they're saying. But if we're just waiting for our turn to speak, we're again in this more of this fight or flight, right? This shallow breathing that you would call it. And so when it comes to that vagus nerve, the vagabond that goes throughout our body, and we think of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. When we think about the parasympathetic, think maybe ventral and dorsal as well. And if you get into that deeper depression and you're not fight or flighting, but you're just kind of going in, that could be part of that that parasympathetic nervous system, but in that kind of that space where we think that we can't get out. So that breathing can kind of help you start to get out. It could be that simple. I know it's like, there's no way it's that simple, but it really is those little things that do start to add up. I think sometimes I remember seeing people that like movie stars, example, and all of a sudden they're on the big screen and I'm thinking, where did they come from? Like, how did they get there? And then later on you hear their stories of how much they had been trying and attempting and had the nose and, the work that they put into before they came there. And we think, they just had it made. And we don't know the whole story. And I think about that when it's like those little things that we need to do to get to the spot where we're like, oh yeah, I feel like I've arrived to myself. I feel like I'm now in tune with myself. I feel like I'm part of me again. And that breathing, that simple thing of just breathing, is such a beautiful thing. And just even when I make these videos, I try to even consciously think that, I need to stop and breathe and not do this, because sometimes I'll start talking, right? And it's like this up in here, the chest, and I'm like, oh no, I want to get down here. I want to be in that calm state and in a state where I am paying attention to the words I'm saying. I want to have, make it a quality production so that people that get to listen to this and take the time to actually hear about it, that they feel like they're getting something that's worth their time and of value. So my friends, my ask for today is that if you've watched this video, I'd love to have you share it with a friend. If there's a friend that you know that is struggling with any form of depression, if they are struggling with anything in their lives, just maybe a relationship situation, a new job change, the kids are going to leave, those things, obviously transition stuff is the things that I kind of work on and coach my clients through. But if they're just struggling with just kind of the everyday to day things, definitely be an ear for them. Get them to a resource of somebody that can help them, that can listen, that's a licensed professional for when it comes to deep depression. But if they're just having these gloomy days every once in a while, send them this video. Even if they're depressed, maybe send this video. I would hope that it would cheer them up, that they would feel like, maybe I'll try to breathe. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Because I get it. Sometimes you get things that are thrown at you and people are just trying to help and you feel like, okay, enough with it. Okay, I get it. I've got, nothing's helping. Nothing's making it better. But maybe this one video, maybe this one little thing of breathing, maybe, just maybe it could help. And I'm always kind of the thought that I would love to be able to put something out into the world that could help somebody else that's in need. So, okay, my friends, it's good to have you here. I'm glad that you tuned in, that you took this time. I hope that this is helpful information. I hope that you sing all day long, that you hum your songs, that you smile at people that you see, that you stop and take a breath, that you listen to those who are talking and just sit there and listen and actually absorb their information, because those things are actually helping you as well. All right, my friends, we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.